Adrian Voss's hand rose high above his shoulder, fingers curled into a fist. His face twisted with rage as he stepped toward the nurse who'd spoken out of turn. The entire lobby of Blackridge General Hospital froze. Doctors, orderlies, visitors, all holding their breath. His knuckles aimed straight for her face. Then it happened. 1 second, he was towering over her. The next, his wrist was locked midair, his body jerked sideways, and his knees slammed into the polished tile with a bone-rattling crack. His arm twisted behind his back at an angle that made grown men wince. Emily Harper, quiet, polite, forgettable Emily, stood over him, her grip iron tight, her expression unchanged. No one moved, no one spoke, because the soft nurse they'd all dismissed just shattered every assumption in the room. If you want to see how far a single moment of courage can travel, stay with me until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story has reached across the world. Emily Harper arrived at Blackridge General on a Tuesday morning in late September, carrying a single duffel bag and a thermos of black coffee. She wore plain gray scrubs, her blonde hair pulled into a low ponytail, no makeup, no jewelry. She didn't smile at the security guard who buzzed her in. She didn't wave at the receptionist who barely glanced up. She walked through the double doors like someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. The hiring manager, a wiry woman named Diane Ortiz, met her in the administrative wing. Diane had the look of someone who'd stopped sleeping well years ago. Dark circles, tight mouth, hands that fidgeted with her badge lanyard. "You're the transfer from County Memorial?" Diane asked, flipping through a thin folder. "That's right. Says here you worked trauma for 2 years. 3. Diane's eyes flicked up. "Why leave?" Emily shrugged. "Needed a change." It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. Diane led her down a hallway that smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a pale, sickly glow. Nurses moved quickly, heads down, voices low. No one lingered. No one laughed. "You'll be on the 4th floor," Diane said. "General medicine, vitals, meds, discharge paperwork. Nothing too intense." Emily nodded. "One more thing." Diane stopped outside the elevator, her voice dropping. "Mr. Voss runs a tight ship. Don't question him. Don't contradict him. And for the love of everything, don't make eye contact when he's upset." Emily tilted her head slightly. "Who's Mr. Voss?" Diane's face went blank. "The CEO." The elevator doors slid open. Emily stepped inside. "Welcome to Blackridge," Diane muttered, and the doors closed. The 4th floor was a maze of identical hallways, beige walls and flickering monitors. Emily found the nurses' station, a cramped desk surrounded by filing cabinets and half-empty coffee mugs. 2 nurses sat hunched over charts, barely acknowledging her presence. "New girl?" one of them asked without looking up. Her name tag read Carla. "Emily Harper." "Great, you can take room 412. Guy's been pressing his call button for the last hour." Emily set her bag down and grabbed a clipboard. "What does he need?" "Pain meds. But his chart says he's maxed out." Carla finally glanced at her, eyes flat. "So, good luck with that." Emily walked into room 412. The patient was a man in his 60s, thin and pale, his face creased with discomfort. His name was listed as Roger Maitland. "Finally, he rasped. I've been calling for someone." Emily pulled a chair close to the bed. "I see you're due for another dose in 2 hours. What's your pain level right now?" 8, maybe 9. She checked his vitals. Heart rate elevated, breathing shallow. His hands were trembling. She leaned in slightly. "Have you been able to sleep at all?" "Not since last night." Emily made a note. "I'll talk to the attending about adjusting your dosage." Roger's eyes widened. "You can do that?" "I can ask." She left the room and returned to the nurse's station. Carla was gone. A younger nurse named Becca sat in her place, scrolling through her phone. "Who's the attending for 412? Emily asked. Becca didn't look up. "Dr. Landon, but he's in surgery." "When will he be back?" "No idea." Emily picked up the phone and dialed the OR extension. It rang 4 times before someone answered. "This is Harper, 4th floor. I need to speak to Dr. Landon about a pain management adjustment for a post-op patient." The voice on the other end was clipped. "He's in the middle of a procedure. I understand. Can you have him call me when he's out?" A pause. "Sure." The line went dead. Emily hung up and went back to Roger's room. He looked worse, sweat beading on his forehead, his breathing labored. "Did you reach the doctor?" he asked. "He's in surgery. I left a message." Roger's jaw tightened. "So I just... Wait!" Emily pulled the chair closer again. "I'm going to stay here until he calls back." Roger blinked at her. "You don't have to do that." "I know." She sat with him for the next 40 minutes. She didn't check her phone. She didn't leave to grab water. She just sat there, adjusting his pillows, dimming the lights, keeping her voice low and steady. When the phone finally rang, she answered on the second ring. "This is Dr. Landon. Someone called about a pain med adjustment?" "Yes, Roger Maitland in 412. He's post-op day 3, pain level 8 to 9, vitals show distress. Current dosage isn't covering it." There was a long pause. "And you are?" "Emily Harper. I'm the nurse on his case." "Right." His tone cooled. "I'll review his chart when I'm back on the floor." "When will that be?" "When I'm done." The line clicked off. Emily set the phone down slowly. Roger was watching her. "He's not going to change it, is he?" Roger said quietly. Emily didn't answer right away. Then she stood. "Let me see what else I can do." She left the room and headed straight for the attending lounge. Dr. Landon was standing by the coffee machine, still in his scrubs, scrolling through his phone. "Dr. Landon?" He glanced up, annoyed. "What?" "Roger Maitland, room 412. He needs a dosage adjustment." Landon's expression hardened. "I said I'd review it." "When?" His eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" Emily kept her voice level. "He's in pain right now. You can adjust it now, or I can page the attending supervisor." Landon stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You've been here for what, 2 hours? And you think you can tell me how to do my job?" Emily didn't flinch. "I'm telling you, your patient is suffering." For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he shoved his phone into his pocket and brushed past her. "Fine, I'll look at the chart." He didn't look at the chart. He signed off on a small increase, barely enough to matter, and disappeared into the next room. Emily went back to Roger. She administered the adjusted dose, stayed until his breathing evened out, until the tension in his face softened. "Thank you," he whispered. Emily nodded once. "Rest." By the end of her shift, word had spread. The new nurse had gone head-to-head with Dr. Landon. Some people were impressed. Most were just nervous. Carla caught her at the elevator. "You know he's going to make your life hell now, right?" Emily pressed the button for the lobby. "Probably." "Then why did you do it?" The doors opened. Emily stepped inside. "Because someone had to." The next morning, Emily was reassigned to the ER. Diane didn't explain why. She just handed Emily a new badge and pointed her toward the basement level. The ER at Blackridge was chaos incarnate. Overcrowded, understaffed, and running on fumes. The attending physician, Dr. Marcus Hale, was a wiry man with graying hair and the exhausted look of someone who'd stopped caring about anything except getting through the day. "You're the new one?" he asked, not looking up from a chart. "Emily Harper." "Great. Triage is backed up. Start there." Emily spent the next 6 hours sorting through patients. Sprained ankles, chest pains, allergic reactions, a kid who'd swallowed a Lego. She moved quickly, efficiently, asking the right questions, flagging the urgent cases, keeping the line moving. Around 2 in the afternoon, a man in an expensive suit walked through the ER doors. He didn't check in. He didn't wait. He just walked straight past the desk, past the waiting area, and into the treatment bay. Emily looked up from her clipboard. The man was tall, mid-40s, with slicked-back dark hair and a jawline that looked like it had been carved for the sole purpose of intimidation. His suit was tailored, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. He moved like someone who'd never been told no in his life. Adrian Voss. He stopped in the middle of the bay and looked around, his gaze sweeping over nurses, doctors, patients. When his eyes landed on a young nurse fumbling with an IV line, he walked straight toward her. "What's taking so long?" he snapped. The nurse, barely out of her 20s, flinched. "I'm sorry, Mr. Voss. The patient has difficult veins. Then get someone who can do it right." The nurse's hand started shaking. She tried again, missed the vein. Blood welled up under the skin. Voss's face darkened. "Are you incompetent?" I'm sorry. Get out." The nurse dropped the IV kit and hurried away, her eyes wet. Voss turned to the nearest doctor. "Get someone competent in here, now." No one moved. Emily set her clipboard down and walked over. She picked up the IV kit, wiped the patient's arm clean, found the vein on the first try, and secured the line in under 30 seconds. The patient, a middle-aged woman, let out a shaky breath. "Thank you." Emily nodded and turned to leave. "You?" She stopped. Voss was staring at her. "What's your name?" "Emily Harper." "You're new." "I started yesterday." His eyes narrowed. "Then let me make something very clear. In this hospital, you do what you're told. You don't question, you don't hesitate, and you don't embarrass the staff in front of patients." Emily met his gaze. "I didn't embarrass anyone. I did the job." The room went silent. Voss took a step closer. "You think you're clever." Emily didn't move. "No, sir." "Good." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "Because the clever ones don't last long here." Then he walked away. Emily stood there for a moment, her pulse steady, her expression unchanged. Then she went back to triage. But everyone had seen it, and everyone knew she'd just made the list. The rest of the week passed in a blur. Emily worked her shifts, kept her head down, and stayed out of Voss's way. But she noticed things. The way nurses avoided certain hallways when Voss was near. The way doctors changed their tone mid-sentence if he walked into a room. The way entire conversations would stop the moment his footsteps echoed down the corridor. She saw a surgical resident get chewed out for asking a clarifying question during rounds. She watched a custodian get written up for missing a single trash can. She listened to whispered stories in the break room, people who'd been fired for reasons that didn't add up, complaints that vanished into thin air, HR meetings that ended with threats instead of solutions. Blackridge General wasn't just a hospital, it was a kingdom, and Adrian Voss was the king. On Friday afternoon, Emily was restocking a supply closet when she heard raised voices down the hall. She stepped out and saw Voss standing in front of the nurse's station, his face red, his finger jabbed toward a young male nurse named Kyle. "I don't care what the protocol says," Voss hissed. "You will discharge that patient today." Kyle stammered, but the attending said, "I don't care what the attending said. I'm telling you to discharge him." "Mr. Voss, he's still running a fever. Then give him antibiotics and send him home." "He needs observation." Voss slammed his hand on the desk. The sound cracked through the hallway like a gunshot. Kyle went pale. "Do you understand me?" Voss said, his voice low and deadly. Kyle nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." Voss turned and walked away. Emily waited until he was gone. Then she walked over to Kyle, who was gripping the edge of the desk, his knuckles white. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Kyle didn't look at her. "Yeah. You don't have to discharge him." Kyle's eyes flicked up, panicked. "Yes, I do." "Not if it's unsafe." "You don't get it." Kyle's voice cracked. "If I don't do what he says, I'm done. He'll find a reason. He always does." Emily studied him for a moment. "What happens if the patient crashes at home?" Kyle's face went even paler. "I don't know." "You do know." Kyle looked away. "It's not my problem anymore." Emily didn't push, but she made a mental note. That night, Emily sat in her apartment, a small one-bedroom in a quiet part of town, and opened her laptop. She pulled up Blackridge General's employee portal and started reading. Incident reports, disciplinary files, turnover rates. The numbers didn't lie. In the last 2 years, Blackridge had lost over 40% of its nursing staff. Complaints ranged from hostile work environment to intimidation to outright harassment, and every single one had been dismissed or buried. There were patterns, names that appeared again and again in incident reports, always as the accused, never as the punished. Adrian Voss's name showed up 17 times, 0 consequences. Emily leaned back in her chair, her jaw tight. She'd seen this before. Different hospital, different tyrant, same pattern. She closed the laptop and stared at the wall. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. The voice on the other end was gruff. "Harper, didn't think I'd hear from you again. I need a favor, Sergeant." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that stays off the record." A pause, then a low chuckle. "You're getting yourself into trouble again, aren't you?" Emily's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Something like that. "All right, what do you need?" "Background check, full workup, and I need it quiet." "On who?" "Adrian Voss, CEO of Blackridge General Hospital in Riverside." The line went quiet for a long moment. "You sure about this, Harper?" Emily's eyes were hard. "Yeah, I'm sure." "All right, give me 48 hours. "Thanks." She hung up. The weekend passed slowly. Emily worked a double shift on Saturday, covering for a nurse who'd called in sick at the last minute. Sunday, she stayed home, cleaned her apartment, went for a run. She didn't think about Voss. She didn't think about Blackridge. But Monday morning came fast. She walked into the hospital and immediately felt the shift in the air. People were moving faster. Voices were quieter. Eyes darted toward the executive wing. Something had happened. She found Becca at the nurse's station, pale and jittery. "What's going on?" Emily asked. Becca glanced around nervously. "Voss fired 3 people this morning." "For what?" "Does it matter?" Becca's voice was barely a whisper. "He doesn't need a reason." Emily set her bag down. "Who were they?" "Kyle, Sandra from radiology, and one of the ER techs. I don't remember his name." Emily's stomach tightened. "Kyle got fired?" Becca nodded. "They escorted him out at 7 this morning. Didn't even let him get his stuff from his locker." Emily didn't say anything. She just stood there, processing. "There's more," Becca said. "Voss called an all-staff meeting. 2 o'clock. Attendance is mandatory." Emily's jaw set. "Got it." She worked through the morning on autopilot, checking vitals, administering meds, updating charts, but her mind was elsewhere. At noon, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email." SGT. Emily stepped into an empty patient room and opened her email. The message was brief, the attachment heavy. She downloaded the file and started reading. Adrian Voss, born in Connecticut, MBA, from a mid-tier business school. No medical background. He'd climbed the corporate ladder through hospital administration, CFO here, VP there, always leaving right before audits came back messy. 3 hospitals in 5 years. Each one had seen staff complaints spike during his tenure. Each one had settled at least 2 lawsuits quietly, but nothing stuck. He was careful, smart, always just clean enough to move on. Emily scrolled further. Then she saw it. A complaint filed 8 months ago at his previous hospital, Maplewood Regional. A surgical nurse had accused Voss of physical intimidation. The complaint included witness statements, photos of bruising, a detailed timeline. It had been dismissed. The nurse had been let go 2 weeks later. Emily's grip on her phone tightened. She kept reading. The nurse's name was Rachel Nguyen. She'd filed an appeal. It was denied. She'd tried to take it to the state board. It never made it past the first hearing. Emily closed the file and stared at the wall. Then she forwarded the email to a secure cloud folder and deleted it from her phone. At exactly 2 o'clock, Emily walked into the main auditorium. It was already packed. Nurses, doctors, orderlies, administrative staff. Everyone looked tense. No one was talking. She found a seat near the back, next to Carla, who looked like she hadn't slept. "You hear what this is about?" Carla whispered. Emily shook her head. "Rumor is he's making an example." "Of who?" Carla didn't answer. At 2:05, Adrian Voss walked onto the stage. He didn't smile. He didn't greet them. He just stood there, hands clasped behind his back, surveying the room like a general inspecting troops. "I called this meeting," he began, his voice echoing through the speakers, Because it's come to my attention that some of you have forgotten what it means to work at Blackridge General. The room was dead silent. You seem to think that protocols are suggestions, that my directives are optional, that you can question, delay, or ignore orders without consequence. His eyes scanned the crowd, cold and calculating. Let me remind you, this hospital runs because I allow it to run. Your jobs exist because I allow them to exist. And if you think for 1 second that you are irreplaceable, I will personally prove you wrong. He let the words hang in the air. Then he gestured toward the side of the stage. This morning I terminated 3 employees, not because they were incompetent, but because they forgot who makes the decisions here. A projector screen lowered behind him. 3 photos appeared: Kyle, Sandra, and a young man Emily didn't recognize. These individuals thought they could push back, question policy, undermine authority. Voss's voice was ice. They were wrong. Carla's hand gripped the armrest. Emily sat perfectly still. Now, Voss continued, I want to make sure we're all on the same page moving forward. He pulled a small remote from his pocket and clicked it. The photos disappeared. A new image appeared, a policy document. Effective immediately, all staff will be subject to quarterly performance reviews. Any employee found to be underperforming, insubordinate, or failing to meet expectations will be placed on probation. A second infraction will result in immediate termination. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Voss's eyes swept the room. Do I make myself clear? No one spoke. Good. He clicked the remote again. The screen went dark. You're dismissed. People started to stand, but slowly, cautiously, like they were afraid sudden movement might trigger something. Emily stayed in her seat. Carla leaned over. We need to get out of here. Emily didn't move. In a minute. Emily, go. I'll catch up. Carla hesitated, then stood and filed out with the others. Emily waited until the auditorium was nearly empty. Then she stood and walked toward the stage. Voss was still there, talking to one of his assistants, a nervous-looking woman in a pencil skirt who nodded at everything he said. Emily walked right up to the edge of the stage. Voss glanced down at her. Can I help you? I have a question. His assistant went pale. Voss's expression didn't change. Go ahead. Emily kept her voice level. The new policy. Does it apply to administrative staff as well? Voss's eyes narrowed slightly. It applies to everyone. Including you? The assistant took a step back. Voss stared at Emily for a long moment. Then he stepped down from the stage, closing the distance between them. What's your name again? He asked softly. Emily Harper. Right, Emily. He smiled, cold, reptilian. Let me give you some advice. The people who last here are the ones who know when to keep their mouths shut. Emily met his gaze, unflinching. And the people who don't? Voss leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. They don't last at all. Then he turned and walked away, his assistant scurrying after him. Emily stood there alone in the empty auditorium, her pulse steady, her mind sharp. She'd just drawn a target on her back, and she knew it. The next morning, Emily arrived at the hospital to find her schedule had been changed. Again, she was no longer assigned to the ER. She wasn't on the 4th floor either. She'd been moved to the ICU night shift. The ICU was a different world, quieter, darker, more intense. The patients were critical. The margins for error were razor thin. It was where they sent nurses who could handle pressure, or where they sent nurses they wanted to break. Emily reported to the charge nurse, a stern woman in her 50s named Monica Reeves. Monica had the look of someone who'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed either time. For Harper? Monica asked, flipping through a binder. Yes. You've worked ICU before? 2 years at County Memorial. Monica studied her for a moment. Then you know the drill, vitals every hour, meds on time, alarms get answered immediately, no exceptions. Emily nodded. One more thing. Monica's voice dropped. I don't know what you did to get put on nights, and I don't care. You pull your weight, we'll get along fine. You don't, and you'll wish you'd stayed in the ER. Emily met her eyes. Understood. Monica handed her a patient roster. You've got beds 3, 7, and 9. Get to work. The night shift was brutal. Emily's first patient was a 70-year-old man recovering from open-heart surgery. His vitals were unstable, his oxygen levels kept dipping, and his family called every 2 hours asking for updates. Her second patient was a young woman, mid-20s, who'd been in a car accident, fractured skull, internal bleeding, still unconscious. Her parents sat by her bedside, holding her hand, whispering prayers Emily couldn't hear. Her third patient was a man in his 40s with late-stage liver failure. He was on the transplant list, but the wait was long and his time was short. He didn't have family, he didn't have visitors. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting. Emily moved between them like clockwork, adjusting IVs, checking monitors, charting every change. She didn't sit down, she didn't take a break, she just worked. Around 3 in the morning, the alarms went off on bed 7. Emily was at the bedside in seconds. The young woman's heart rate had spiked. 180, 190, climbing fast. Her oxygen saturation was dropping. Page the attending, Emily said sharply to the unit clerk. Dr. Hale's on call. I don't care who's on call, page him now. Emily checked the woman's airway, adjusted the oxygen flow, started a secondary IV line. The monitors screamed. The parents stood frozen in the corner, clutching each other. Dr. Hale arrived 6 minutes later, still half asleep. What's the situation? He asked, moving to the bedside. V-TAC. Started 3 minutes ago. I've got her on high-flow oxygen, pushed adenosine, no response. Hale checked the monitors. Pulse? Weak and thready. All right, prep for cardioversion. Emily was already moving. She grabbed the crash cart, pulled the defibrillator pads, handed Hale the paddles. Clear, Hale said. The shock hit. The woman's body jerked. The monitor flatlined for a second, then beeped. Sinus rhythm. Stable. Hale let out a breath. Nice work. Emily was already checking the woman's vitals, adjusting the drip rates, updating the chart. The parents were crying, holding each other. Is she okay? The mother asked, her voice breaking. Emily turned to her. She's stable. We'll keep monitoring her closely. Thank you, the father whispered. Thank you. Emily nodded once and went back to work. By the time her shift ended at 7 in the morning, Emily was running on fumes. She clocked out, grabbed her bag and walked toward the exit. Monica was waiting by the door. You did good tonight, Monica said. Emily paused. Thanks. But you should know, word travels fast around here. Voss knows you're in the ICU now. Emily's jaw tightened. And? Monica's expression was unreadable. Just watch yourself. Emily walked out into the cold morning air. The sky was gray, the streets empty. She got into her car, sat there for a moment, then drove home. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Instead, she sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop. She pulled up the file on Adrian Voss again and started cross-referencing names, dates, complaints. She found another pattern. Every hospital Voss had worked at had seen a spike in patient mortality rates during his tenure. Not massive, just enough to be statistically significant. And every time, the explanation was the same: budget cuts, staffing shortages, unfortunate circumstances. But the numbers didn't lie. Emily stared at the screen, her mind racing. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Be careful, he's watching you. Emily's blood ran cold. She checked the sender. Unknown. No caller ID. She typed back, "Who is this?" No response. Emily set the phone down, her heart pounding. Then another text came through. Kyle says hi. Emily stared at the message for a long time. Then she deleted it and powered off her phone. She sat in the dark kitchen, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator, and thought about what came next. Because one thing was clear, this wasn't just about her anymore. The following week was a test of endurance. Emily worked 5 straight night shifts in the ICU, each one bleeding into the next. She barely ate. She slept in short bursts. She moved through the hospital like a shadow, doing her job, staying out of sight. But she was paying attention. She noticed the way certain doctors avoided the ICU when Voss was on the floor. She saw the way Monica's jaw would tighten whenever his name came up. She heard whispered conversations in the break room, stories about people who'd tried to push back and disappeared. One night, during her break, she found a folder tucked under her locker. No note, just a folder. Inside were photocopies of internal memos, budget reports, incident logs. Someone had been collecting evidence. Emily flipped through the pages, her pulse quickening. There were names, dates, numbers that didn't add up. Purchase orders for equipment that never arrived. Staff reductions that coincided with Voss's bonus increases. And then, at the bottom of the stack, a handwritten note. You're not the only one who sees it. Be ready. Emily closed the folder and slipped it into her bag. She didn't know who'd left it, but she knew what it meant. The fight was coming. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. Emily was in the middle of her shift when the ER called up. Mass casualty event, multi-car pileup on the highway. They needed beds, fast. The ICU scrambled. Monica started coordinating discharges, transferring stable patients to step-down units, clearing space. Emily prepped bed 7. The young woman from the car accident had been transferred out 2 days ago. The bed was ready. 20 minutes later, the first trauma patient arrived. A man in his 30s, crushed chest, internal bleeding, unconscious. Emily and the trauma team worked in sync, lines in, fluids running, scans ordered, vitals monitored. Then the second patient arrived. Then the third. The ICU was at capacity. Alarms were going off. Families were being pushed into waiting rooms. The air was thick with tension. And then Adrian Voss walked in. He didn't help. He didn't ask what was needed. He just stood there watching, his expression cold. Monica saw him first. Mr. Voss, we're in the middle of, but I can see that. His voice cut through the chaos. Why wasn't I notified? We've been handling it. That's not what I asked. Monica's face went tight. We'll file a report after. You'll file it now. The room went silent except for the beeping monitors. Monica stared at him. We have critically injured patients, and I have a hospital to run. You will follow protocol. Emily looked up from her patient. Voss's back was to her, but she could see Monica's face, anger, frustration, helplessness, all at once. Monica's voice shook. With all due respect, sir, the protocol can wait until we stabilize. Voss stepped forward. Are you refusing a direct order? Emily set down the IV line she was adjusting and walked over. Mr. Voss. He turned, his eyes locked on her. We need this space right now, Emily said calmly. If you want a report, I'll write it myself after my shift. Voss's jaw tightened. Excuse me? You heard me. The entire ICU was watching now. Nurses, doctors, techs, everyone. Voss took a step toward Emily. You're way out of line. Emily didn't move. And you're in the way. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Voss smiled, cold, dangerous. You just made a very big mistake. He turned and walked out. Monica grabbed Emily's arm. What the hell are you doing? Emily pulled free. My job. She went back to her patient, hands steady, mind focused, but she knew. The hammer was about to fall. The next morning, Emily was called to HR. The meeting was short. Diane Ortiz sat across from her, hands folded, expression carefully neutral. Emily, we've received a complaint about your conduct. Emily didn't blink. From who? That's confidential. What's the complaint? Diane slid a paper across the desk. Insubordination, refusal to follow protocol, disrespect toward senior leadership. Emily read the document. Every word was carefully chosen, every accusation vague enough to be plausible. This is ridiculous, Emily said. Regardless, we're placing you on administrative leave pending an investigation. Emily looked up. For how long? 2 weeks, possibly longer. And if I refuse? Diane's expression didn't change. Then you'll be terminated. Emily stood. Fine. She walked out of the HR office, her mind already moving 3 steps ahead. She had 2 weeks. That was all the time she needed. She drove straight to a coffee shop 3 blocks from her apartment, ordered black coffee she didn't drink, and opened her laptop in the corner booth, where no one could see the screen. The folder from her locker sat beside her. She pulled out the memos, the budget reports, the incident logs. Then she opened the file the sergeant had sent her and started connecting dots. Adrian Voss had a pattern. Every hospital he touched bled money in strange ways, purchase orders that never materialized, consultant fees paid to shell companies, equipment leases that made no sense, and every time someone got close to asking questions, they disappeared, fired, transferred, silenced. Emily pulled up Blackridge's financials, public records, annual reports, tax filings. She cross-referenced vendor names, payment dates, amounts. 3 hours later, she had it. A consulting firm called Meridian Solutions Group had been paid over $2 million in the last 18 months. Services listed as operational efficiency analysis, but Meridian had no website, no office address, no employees listed anywhere. Emily ran the business registration. It had been filed in Delaware 2 years ago. The registered agent was a law firm. The owner was buried under 3 layers of LLCs. But she kept digging, and at the bottom, buried in a filing from 6 months ago, she found a name: Adrian Voss's brother-in-law. Emily sat back, her pulse steady, her mind sharp. She had him. But she needed more. Evidence wasn't enough. She needed witnesses. She needed people willing to talk. She closed the laptop and made a call. Kyle answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was cautious. "Hello? It's Emily Harper." Silence. "I know what happened to you," Emily said. "And I know you're not the only one." Kyle's breath hitched. "I can't talk about this." "You don't have to. Just listen." Emily kept her voice calm. "Did Voss pay you severance?" "Yeah, 3 months. Did you sign an NDA?" A pause. "How did you know?" "Because he's done it before. Maplewood Regional. Southside General, probably more." Emily leaned forward. "Kyle, I need to know, did you keep copies of anything? Emails, texts, anything he sent you?" I'm not supposed to say. I'm not asking you to go public. I'm asking if you still have them." Another long pause, then quietly, "Yeah, I saved everything." "Good. Don't delete them, and don't talk to anyone from Blackridge. If they contact you, don't respond." "Why are you doing this?" Kyle's voice cracked. "You barely know me." Emily's jaw set. "Because someone has to." She hung up and made 3 more calls. 2 former nurses who'd been let go under suspicious circumstances. 1 doctor who'd transferred out after filing a complaint that went nowhere. All of them had stories. All of them had kept records. By the time the sun went down, Emily had a list of 8 people willing to talk. Off the record, for now. But it was a start. She went home, ate leftover takeout standing over the sink, and slept for 4 hours. When she woke up, she had a plan. The next morning, Emily walked into a law office in downtown Riverside. The firm was small, specializing in employment and whistleblower cases. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s named Teresa Grimaldi, met her in a conference room with glass walls and too much sunlight. "You said this was about Blackridge General?" Teresa asked, setting down her coffee. Emily slid the folder across the table. "Adrian Voss, CEO. He's been running a protection racket disguised as hospital administration." Teresa opened the folder and started reading. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes moved faster with each page. After 10 minutes, she looked up. "Where did you get this? Does it matter?" "If it's admissible, yes." Emily leaned forward. "Most of it's public record. Budget reports, tax filings, business registrations. The rest came from employees who were illegally terminated." Teresa tapped her pen against the table. "You have witnesses willing to testify?" 8 so far. Maybe more if we move fast." Teresa studied her. "What do you want out of this?" Emily's voice was flat. "I want him gone." Teresa sat back, considering. Then she nodded. "All right. I'll take the case. But I need you to understand, this is going to get ugly. Voss has money, connections, and a legal team that will bury us in motions if we're not careful." "I'm not asking for careful," Emily said. "I'm asking for effective." Teresa smiled, thin, sharp. "Then we're going to get along just fine." They spent the next 2 hours going through every document, every name, every date. Teresa made notes, asked questions, poked holes in the timeline. "We need more on the financial side," Teresa said finally. "The shell company is good, but we need proof of direct benefit. Bank statements, wire transfers, something that ties Voss personally to the money." Emily nodded. "I'll get it." "How?" Emily stood. "Better if you don't know." That night, Emily sat in her car outside Blackridge General, watching the windows. The administrative wing was on the 3rd floor, corner office. Voss's office. The lights went off at 8:30. Voss walked out 10 minutes later, climbed into a black Mercedes, and drove away. Emily waited another hour. Then she got out of her car and walked toward the employee entrance. Her badge still worked. Security hadn't deactivated it yet. She swiped in, took the back stairs to the 3rd floor, and moved quickly down the hallway. The admin wing was empty. Most staff went home by 6. Voss's office door was locked, but the keypad beside it blinked green when she entered the default code. Hospitals never changed them. The door clicked open. Emily stepped inside and closed it behind her. She didn't turn on the lights. The glow from the street lamps outside was enough. The office was exactly what she expected. Leather chairs, polished desk, framed certificates on the wall, a photo of Voss shaking hands with some politician, everything designed to project power. Emily sat down at his computer. The screen was locked, password protected. She pulled a USB drive from her pocket, a gift from the sergeant, preloaded with software that could bypass most standard encryptions. She plugged it in and waited. The screen flickered. A command prompt appeared. Lines of code scrolled past. 3 minutes later, she was in. Emily opened his email first, thousands of messages organized into folders. She skimmed through them. Routine hospital business, budget approvals, staff complaints. Then she found a folder labeled MSC, Meridian Solutions Group. She clicked it open. Inside were contracts, invoices, payment confirmations, emails between Voss and someone named Richard Landry, his brother-in-law. The tone was casual, familiar. Wire confirmed. $240,000. Usual account. Invoice attached. Market as Q3 Consulting. Board approved the budget increase. We're clear. Emily's hands moved fast, copying files onto a second USB drive. Emails, PDFs, spreadsheets, everything. Then she heard footsteps in the hallway. Emily froze. The footsteps stopped outside the door. She pulled the USB drive, shut down the command prompt, and slipped behind the desk just as the door handle turned. The door opened. A security guard stepped inside, flashlight in hand. He swept the beam across the room. It passed over the desk, the chairs, the window. Emily held her breath, crouched low, her back pressed against the side of the desk. The guard muttered something into his radio. "3rd floor admin, all clear." Then he stepped back out and closed the door. Emily waited 30 seconds. Then she stood, moved to the door, and slipped out into the hallway. She took the back stairs down, exited through the loading dock, and walked calmly to her car. Her hands didn't shake until she was 3 blocks away. The next morning, Emily met Teresa at the law office again. She handed over the USB drive without a word. Teresa plugged it into her laptop and started reading. Her expression shifted, surprise, then satisfaction, then something close to anger. "This is good," Teresa said quietly. "This is really good." "Enough to move forward?" Emily asked. "Enough to bury him." Teresa leaned back, fingers steepled. "Here's what's going to happen. We file a complaint with the State Medical Board and the Attorney General's office simultaneously. We include the financial records, the witness statements, and the internal emails. We make it public before Voss has time to cover his tracks." Emily nodded. "How long?" 2 days? Maybe 3. I need to verify everything, make sure it's airtight." "Do it." Teresa looked at her. "You know this is going to blow back on you, right? Voss will know you're involved. He'll come after you." Emily's voice was calm. "Let him." But Voss didn't wait 2 days. The next afternoon, Emily's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. "Hello?" "Miss Harper." The voice was smooth, controlled. "Adrian Voss. I think we need to talk." Emily's grip on the phone tightened. "I'm on leave. There's nothing to talk about." "I disagree. I have a proposition for you." "Not interested." You haven't heard it yet." Emily didn't respond. Voss continued, his tone almost friendly. "You're a talented nurse. Smart, resourceful. The kind of person any hospital would be lucky to have. It would be a shame to see your career derailed over a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding." "I think there is." His voice hardened slightly. "You've been digging into things that don't concern you, asking questions, making accusations. That's dangerous, Miss Harper. For you." Emily's jaw set. "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning. Walk away now, and I'll make sure you land on your feet. Another hospital, good references, clean record. You can start over." "And if I don't?" Voss's voice dropped. "Then I'll make sure you never work in healthcare again. Not in this state. Not anywhere." Emily was quiet for a moment, then she spoke, her voice steady. "You're done, Voss. You just don't know it yet." She hung up. Her phone rang again immediately. She let it go to voicemail. Then a text came through. "You made your choice." Emily deleted it and turned off her phone. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat on her couch, staring at the wall, running through every possible move Voss could make. He'd go after her credibility first, spread rumors, plant false complaints, make her look unstable. Then he'd go after the witnesses, intimidate them, pay them off, threaten lawsuits. And if that didn't work, he'd go after Teresa, drag the case out, bury it in paperwork, make it too expensive to continue. Emily had seen it before. Powerful people didn't go down easy, but she wasn't backing down. The next morning, Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Teresa. "We need to meet, now." Emily drove to the law office. Teresa was waiting in the conference room, her face tight. "What happened?" Emily asked. Teresa slid a document across the table. "Voss filed a defamation suit. Against you. This morning." Emily picked it up. The lawsuit was thick, dense with legal language. The gist was clear. She was being accused of making false and malicious statements, damaging Voss's reputation, interfering with hospital operations. The amount he was suing for, $5 million. Emily set the document down. "He's trying to scare me." "He's trying to bankrupt you, Teresa said. "Even if he loses, the legal fees alone will destroy you. That's the point." Emily's jaw tightened. "Can we countersue?" "Not yet. We don't have standing until we file our complaint." Teresa leaned forward. "Emily, this is what I was talking about. He's playing hardball. If you want to walk away, now's the time." Emily met her eyes. "I'm not walking away." Teresa studied her for a long moment, then she nodded. "All right. Then we go nuclear." "What does that mean?" Teresa pulled out her phone and made a call. "It means we don't wait. We file everything today. Medical board, attorney general, and we leak it to the press." Emily's pulse quickened. "You can do that?" "I know a reporter at the Riverside Tribune investigative team. She's been looking for a story like this for years." Teresa's eyes were hard. "Once it's public, Voss can't bury it. The pressure will force the board to act." "Do it," Emily said. Teresa made the call. 2 hours later, the complaint was filed. State Medical Board, Attorney General's office, copies sent to the hospital board of directors. And at exactly 4 o'clock, the Riverside Tribune published an article online. Blackridge General CEO, under investigation for fraud, embezzlement, and staff abuse. The headline spread like wildfire. Emily's phone started ringing. Blocked numbers, unknown callers. She didn't answer any of them, but she watched the news. Local stations picked up the story, then regional outlets. By evening, it was trending on social media. The hospital released a statement, vague, defensive. "We take all allegations seriously and are conducting an internal review." But the damage was done. That night, Emily sat in her apartment, her laptop open, watching the comments pour in. Former employees sharing their stories. Patients posting about mistreatment. Anonymous tips flooding the Tribune's inbox. The wall of silence was cracking, and Adrian Voss was trapped behind it. The next morning, Emily woke to a pounding on her door. She opened it to find 2 police officers standing in the hallway. "Emily Harper?" one of them asked. Her stomach dropped. "Yes. We need you to come with us." "For what?" The officer's expression was unreadable. Breaking and entering, theft of proprietary information. You're under arrest. Emily's world tilted. Voss had made his move. Emily didn't resist. She held out her wrists, let them cuff her, and walked out of her apartment building between two officers while her neighbors stared through cracked doors. The ride to the station was silent. Emily kept her face neutral, her breathing controlled. She'd been in worse situations. She just had to stay calm. They booked her at the Riverside Police Department. Fingerprints, photos, personal belongings confiscated. Then they put her in an interrogation room and left her there. Emily sat at the metal table, hands folded, and waited. 40 minutes later, the door opened. A detective walked in. Mid-50s, gray suit, tired eyes. His badge read Detective Paul Hendricks. He sat down across from her and opened a folder. "Miss Harper," he began, his tone conversational, "you want to tell me what you were doing in Adrian Voss's office 3 nights ago?" Emily met his gaze. "I want a lawyer." Hendricks sighed. "That's your right. But just so you know, we have security footage. You entering the building at 9:14 p.m., exiting at 9:51. You were in that office and Mr. Voss is claiming you stole proprietary files." Emily said nothing. "He's also claiming you've been harassing him, spreading false information, defamation." Hendricks leaned forward. "Look, I don't know what's going on between you two, but breaking into someone's office? That's a felony. You're looking at jail time." Emily's voice was steady. "I want a lawyer." Hendricks' jaw tightened. He closed the folder and stood. "Fine. Sit tight." He left. The door locked behind him. Emily sat there alone for another 2 hours. Finally, the door opened again. Teresa Grimaldi walked in, her expression tight with controlled fury. "Are you okay?" Teresa asked, sitting down. "I'm fine." Teresa glanced at the two-way mirror, then back at Emily. "They're charging you with breaking and entering, theft, and computer fraud. Voss is pushing hard. He wants you in jail." Emily's jaw set. "Can they make it stick?" "They have footage of you entering the building. That's trespassing at minimum." Teresa's voice dropped. "But here's the thing. Voss doesn't want this to go to trial. He wants you to plead out, take a deal, disappear quietly." "What kind of deal?" "Drop everything. The complaint, the witnesses, the lawsuit. In exchange, he reduces the charges to misdemeanor trespassing. You get probation, and your record gets expunged after a year." Emily's eyes narrowed. "And if I don't take it?" "Then he drags you through court, bankrupts you with legal fees, and destroys your credibility before we ever get to the real case." Teresa paused. "Emily, I need to know, did you actually break into his office?" Emily held her gaze. "I used my employee badge. The door code was default. I copied files that prove he's been embezzling millions." Teresa closed her eyes briefly. "That's still illegal entry and unauthorized access." "I know. And the files you copied, they might not be admissible now. Fruit of the poisonous tree." Emily's voice was cold. "Then we find another way." Teresa studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right, I'll stall them. Buy us some time. But you need to understand, this just got a lot harder." Teresa left to negotiate with the DA's office. Emily was moved to a holding cell, a small concrete box with a bench and a toilet. She sat down and closed her eyes. She'd miscalculated. Voss had anticipated her move, set a trap, and she'd walked right into it. But she wasn't done yet. 6 hours later, Teresa returned. "They're letting you out on bail. 20,000. I don't have that." "I know. I called in a favor. A bail bondsman I've worked with before. You'll owe him $2,000 and you're on electronic monitoring until trial." Emily nodded. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. The arraignment is tomorrow morning. We need to prepare." They released Emily at midnight. She walked out of the station with an ankle monitor locked around her left leg, its red light blinking every few seconds. Teresa drove her home. "Get some sleep," Teresa said as Emily got out of the car. "We have a long day ahead." Emily nodded and went inside, but she didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table staring at the wall, thinking. Voss had outmaneuvered her. He'd turned her biggest weapon, the stolen files, into a liability. Now she was the criminal and he was the victim. But there was one thing he hadn't counted on. She wasn't the only one digging. Emily pulled out her phone and sent a text to Kyle. Are you still willing to talk? The response came 3 minutes later. Yes. Emily typed quickly. I need you to go public, tomorrow, before my arraignment. A pause. Then, what do I say? Everything. What he did to you, what you saw him do to others, don't hold back. Another pause. He'll sue me. He's already suing me, and he can't sue all of us. A long silence. Then, okay, I'll do it. Emily set the phone down and exhaled slowly. One witness wouldn't be enough. But it was a start. She sent the same message to 3 other former employees. 2 responded immediately. The third took an hour, but eventually agreed. By the time the sun came up, Emily had 5 people ready to go on record. The arraignment was at 9 a.m. Emily wore the same clothes she'd been arrested in, jeans, a plain shirt, no makeup. She looked tired. She looked defeated. That was fine. Let them think she was broken. The courtroom was small, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Teresa sat beside her at the defense table. Across the aisle, the prosecutor, a sharp-faced woman named Linda Marsh, shuffled papers with the confident air of someone who'd already won. The judge, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses, entered and sat down. The People versus Emily Harper, the clerk announced. Judge Preston looked at Emily over his glasses. Miss Harper, you're charged with breaking and entering, theft, and unauthorized access to computer systems. How do you plead? Emily stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Bail has been set at $20,000, already posted. You're on electronic monitoring and restricted to Riverside County until trial. Next court date is set for... Your Honor, Teresa interrupted, standing. We'd like to request an expedited trial date. My client's reputation and career are being destroyed while these charges hang over her, and we believe the evidence will show she's innocent. Marsh stood immediately. The people object. We need time to compile evidence, and the people had time to arrest my client within hours, Teresa cut in. Surely you can be ready for trial just as quickly. The judge looked between them. Miss Grimaldi, expedited trials are rare. I understand, Your Honor, but my client is also facing a civil defamation suit filed by the alleged victim in this case, which suggests these charges may be retaliatory. The sooner we get to the truth, the better. Marsh's face tightened. That's inflammatory and irrelevant. It's relevant, Teresa said sharply, because Adrian Voss is using this court as a weapon to silence a whistleblower. The judge held up a hand. That's enough. I'll set a preliminary hearing for 2 weeks from today. If the evidence supports moving forward, we'll schedule trial shortly after. Next case. The gavel came down. Emily sat back down, her pulse steady. 2 weeks. That was all the time she had. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered. Reporters, cameras, microphones. Emily walked down the steps with Teresa at her side, ignoring the shouted questions. Miss Harper, did you break into Adrian Voss's office? Are you guilty? What do you say to people who think you're just a disgruntled employee? Emily kept walking. Then a voice cut through the noise. Miss Harper, do you stand by your accusations against Voss? Emily stopped. She turned toward the reporter, a young woman with a notebook, eyes sharp and focused. Yes, Emily said clearly, I stand by everything. Even if it means jail time? Emily's voice didn't waver. Especially then. The cameras clicked. The reporters scribbled. Teresa touched her arm. We should go. But Emily wasn't done. She looked directly into the nearest camera. Adrian Voss has spent years abusing his power, stealing from the hospital, and terrorizing staff. If standing up to that makes me a criminal, then I'll take the charges. Teresa pulled her away before she could say more. They got into Teresa's car and drove in silence for several blocks. That was risky, Teresa said finally. Emily stared out the window. It was necessary. The DA is going to use that statement against you. I know. Teresa glanced at her. You're not trying to win this in court, are you? Emily's jaw set. I'm trying to win it everywhere. That afternoon, the first witness went public. Kyle posted a video on social media, 15 minutes of him sitting in his living room, face pale but determined, telling his story. The abusive language, the impossible demands, the humiliation, the threats, and finally, The firing that came with a severance check and an NDA that made him feel like he was selling his soul. Within 2 hours, the video had 50,000 views. By evening, it was over 200,000. The second witness, a former radiology tech named Sandra Okoro, posted her own account. She'd been fired after reporting a safety violation that Voss had ignored. She had emails, text messages, documentation. The third witness, a doctor who'd left Blackridge after Voss threatened to destroy his career, gave an interview to the Riverside Tribune. He didn't hold back. One by one, the stories piled up, and the media firestorm grew. Blackridge General released another statement, more defensive this time. We are conducting a thorough internal investigation and will take appropriate action based on the findings. But the board of directors was panicking. Emily could feel it. Late that night, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You need to see this. A link followed. Emily clicked it. It was a news article from a legal blog. State Attorney General opens formal investigation into Blackridge General Hospital. CEO. Emily's breath caught. The pressure was working. The next morning, Emily woke to a call from Teresa. Turn on the news, she thought, Teresa said, her voice tight with barely contained excitement. Emily grabbed the remote and flipped to a local station. A news anchor was speaking, her expression serious. Breaking news this morning, Adrian Voss, CEO of Blackridge General Hospital, has been placed on administrative leave pending investigations by both the State Medical Board and the Attorney General's office. The hospital's board of directors released a statement early this morning announcing the decision. Emily sat on the edge of her couch, her heart pounding. The anchor continued. Voss is facing allegations of embezzlement, fraud, and workplace abuse. Several former employees have come forward with detailed accounts of harassment and retaliation. We'll continue to follow this story as it develops. Emily's phone rang again. Teresa. Did you see it? Teresa asked. I saw it. This changes everything. If the board's putting him on leave, they're distancing themselves. They know he's toxic. Emily's mind was already moving ahead. What about the criminal charges against me? I'm working on it. With Voss on leave and under investigation, the DA is going to have a harder time painting you as the bad guy. I'm pushing for dismissal based on lack of credible complainant. Will it work? It should, but we need to keep the pressure on. Emily nodded. I will. But even as the news spread, Emily knew this wasn't over. Voss was wounded, not dead, and wounded animals were the most dangerous. That afternoon, Emily's phone rang. Blocked number. She answered. Hello? You think you've won. Voss's voice was low, venomous. You haven't. Emily's grip on the phone tightened. You're done, Voss. Accept it. I'm not done until I say I'm done. His voice dropped even lower. You have no idea what you've started. I will destroy you. Your career, your reputation, your life, and when I'm finished, no one will even remember your name. Emily's voice was ice. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. The line went dead. Emily sat there, her pulse pounding in her ears. Then she stood, grabbed her jacket, and headed out the door. She drove to Blackridge General. Her badge was deactivated, but she knew the side entrance codes. She slipped inside and made her way to the 4th floor. The nurse's station was busy, shift change, controlled chaos. No one noticed her. She found Monica in the break room pouring coffee with shaking hands. Monica. Monica spun around, her eyes wide. Emily? What are you doing here? You're not supposed to. I need to ask you something. Emily stepped closer, keeping her voice low. How many people here are ready to talk? Monica's face went pale. About what? About Voss. About everything. Monica set the coffee down, her hands trembling. Emily, you don't understand. He's got people everywhere. Even with him on leave, he's not coming back. You know that, right? Monica's eyes filled with tears. I've worked here for 12 years. I've seen people try to fight him before. They all lost. Emily's voice softened. I'm not them. Monica stared at her for a long moment. Then she wiped her eyes and nodded. There's a group. Nurses, techs, a few doctors. We've been talking, keeping records. Just in case. How many? 15. Maybe 20? Emily felt something shift in her chest. I need to meet with them. Monica hesitated. If Voss finds out, he already knows I'm coming for him. This just makes it official. Monica pulled out her phone. There's a meeting tonight, off-site. I'll send you the address. Emily's phone buzzed a moment later. Thank you, Emily said. Monica's voice was barely a whisper. Don't make me regret this. The meeting was in the basement of a church 3 miles from the hospital. Emily arrived early, parking a block away and walking the rest of the distance. The ankle monitor chafed against her skin, the red light blinking steadily. She descended the stairs and found herself in a small community room, folding chairs arranged in a circle, fluorescent lights humming overhead. People started arriving, nurses, orderlies, lab techs, a few doctors. They looked nervous, glancing over their shoulders, speaking in low voices. Monica arrived last, locking the door behind her. Everyone's here, she said quietly. Emily stood. 23 faces stared back at her. Some she recognized, most she didn't. I know most of you don't know me, Emily began, but you know what I did, and you know why. A few heads nodded. Adrian Voss has spent years terrorizing this hospital. He's stolen money, abused staff, and destroyed lives, and he's gotten away with it because people were too scared to speak up. A woman in the back, a surgical nurse, spoke up. We're still scared. Emily met her eyes. I know, but he's on leave now. The Attorney General is investigating. The media is watching. This is our chance. A doctor near the front shook his head. Even if he goes down, what's to stop the next one? The board knew what he was doing. They let it happen. Then we make sure they can't ignore it anymore, Emily said. We document everything, every incident, every complaint, every witness. We build a case so airtight they can't bury it. Monica stepped forward. I have files, incident reports going back 5 years. I kept copies of everything Voss tried to delete. A lab tech raised his hand. I have emails. He threatened to fire me if I reported a contamination issue. One by one, people spoke up. Stories poured out. Years of abuse, fear, silence. Emily listened to all of it, her mind cataloging every detail. When the last person finished, she spoke again. Here's what we're going to do. Everyone who has documentation, emails, texts, reports, send them to Teresa Grimaldi. She's the lawyer handling the case. She'll compile everything and submit it to the Attorney General. A young nurse raised her hand. What if Voss retaliates? He can't retaliate if he's in prison. The room went quiet. This is bigger than one hospital, Emily continued. If we do this right, we change the system. We make sure this never happens again. Monica's voice was steady. I'm in. Me too, the surgical nurse said. One by one, the others agreed. Emily felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. But it was fragile, and she knew it. The next few days moved fast. Emily stayed home, monitored by the ankle bracelet, while Teresa coordinated with the witnesses. Documents flooded in, hundreds of pages of evidence, all pointing to the same conclusion. Adrian Voss was guilty. The Attorney General's office escalated the investigation. Subpoenas were issued. Bank records were pulled. Forensic accountants started tracing the money, and the media kept digging. Then 5 days after the meeting, Emily got a call from Teresa. The DA's dropping the charges, Teresa said, her voice tight with controlled triumph. Emily's heart stopped. What? They don't have a case. With Voss under investigation and your evidence supporting a whistleblower defense, they're cutting their losses. The charges are being dismissed. Emily sat down hard. When? Official motion is being filed this afternoon. You'll be free by tonight. Emily closed her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The civil suit is still active. Voss is fighting back. Let him fight. That night, a technician came to Emily's apartment and removed the ankle monitor. The red light blinked one last time, then went dark. Emily stood in her living room, rubbing her ankle, feeling the weight lift. But she knew this wasn't over. The next morning, Emily woke to her phone buzzing nonstop. She grabbed it, saw dozens of missed calls and texts. She opened the news app. The headline hit her like a punch. Adrian Voss found dead in apparent suicide. Emily's blood went cold. She read the article, her hands shaking. Voss had been found in his home early that morning, a single gunshot wound. No note. Police were investigating, but initial reports suggested suicide. Emily set the phone down and stared at the wall. Her phone rang. Teresa. "Did you see?" Teresa asked, her voice tight. "I saw." "This changes everything. The investigation will continue, but without him, they'll try to close it," Emily finished. "Blame everything on a dead man and move on." "Exactly." Emily's jaw set. "We don't let them." "Emily, he's dead. The case is going to collapse without a defendant. Then we go after the board. They enabled him. They knew what he was doing." Teresa was silent for a moment. "That's a much harder fight." "I don't care." Teresa sighed. "All right, I'll start pulling board records, but you need to be prepared. This could take years." "I've got time." Emily hung up and sat in the silence of her apartment. Voss was dead. The man who'd terrorized Blackridge, who'd tried to destroy her, was gone. But she didn't feel relief. She felt empty, because the system that had protected him was still intact. That afternoon, Emily drove to Blackridge General. She walked through the front doors for the first time in weeks, her head high, her steps steady. The lobby was buzzing, staff talking in hushed voices, patients watching the news on the waiting room TV. Emily made her way to the 4th floor. The nurse's station was quiet. Carla looked up, her eyes widening. "Emily?" "Hey." Carla stood, looking uncertain. I heard about Voss." Emily nodded. "Yeah." "Is it really over?" Emily met her gaze. "Not yet." She walked to Monica's office and knocked. Monica opened the door, her face drawn and exhausted. "Come in," Monica said quietly. Emily stepped inside. "We need to talk about what happens next." Monica sank into her chair. "The board's in damage control mode. They're trying to spin this as a tragedy, say Voss was under immense pressure, paint him as a victim." Emily's voice was hard. "He wasn't a victim. I know. But they're going to try to bury the investigation with him. Then we don't let them." Emily leaned forward. "We keep pushing. We make sure every board member who looked the other way is held accountable." Monica's eyes filled with tears. "Emily, I'm tired. We all are. We've been fighting for so long. I know, but we're so close." Monica wiped her eyes. "What do you need from me?" "Board meeting minutes, internal memos, anything that shows they knew what Voss was doing." Monica hesitated, then nodded. "I'll see what I can find." Emily stood. "Thank you." As she walked out of the office, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me at Riverside Park. Bench by the lake. 1 hour. Come alone." Emily stared at the message. Then she deleted it and headed for the park. The park was quiet, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grass. Emily found the bench by the lake and sat down. 10 minutes later, a man approached. Mid-60s, gray hair, expensive coat. She didn't recognize him. He sat down beside her without a word. "Who are you?" Emily asked. "My name is Gerald Huxley. I'm on the board of directors at Blackridge." Emily's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" Huxley stared out at the lake. "I want to make you an offer." "I'm not interested." "You haven't heard it yet." He turned to look at her. "The board is prepared to issue a formal apology. We'll implement new oversight policies, hire an independent ethics committee, and create a whistleblower protection program. We'll also offer financial settlements to anyone Voss harmed." Emily's voice was flat. "In exchange for what?" "You drop the civil suit. You stop talking to the press. You let this end." Emily stared at him. "You're trying to buy me off." "I'm trying to move forward. Voss is dead. Dragging this out won't bring him back. It'll just hurt the hospital and the patients who depend on it." Emily's voice was ice. "The patients deserve better than a corrupt board covering its tracks." Huxley's expression hardened. "We're offering you a chance to be part of the solution. Don't throw it away." Emily stood. "I'm not for sale." She walked away without looking back. But as she reached her car, her phone buzzed again. Another text. Same unknown number. You should have taken the deal. Emily's heart started pounding. She looked around the parking lot. Empty. Then her phone rang. Unknown caller. She answered. Who is this? A voice, distorted, mechanical. You think Voss was the only one? You think you've won? Emily's grip on the phone tightened. What do you want? We want you to stop, or we'll make you stop. The line went dead. Emily stood there, the phone still pressed to her ear, her pulse racing. Voss was dead, but the fight wasn't over. Emily didn't go home. She drove to Teresa's office instead, parked in the back lot, and sat in her car until her hands stopped shaking. Then she got out and walked inside. Teresa was still at her desk, working through documents under the harsh glow of a desk lamp. She looked up when Emily entered, her expression shifting immediately. What happened? Emily told her everything, the meeting with Huxley, the threats, the distorted voice on the phone. Teresa's face went hard. We're filing a police report. They won't do anything. We're filing it anyway. Creates a paper trail. Teresa stood and started pacing. Huxley coming to you directly means the board is panicking. They wouldn't risk contact unless they were desperate. Emily sank into a chair. He said patients would suffer if we keep pushing. That's manipulation, classic corporate playbook. Teresa stopped pacing and faced her. Emily, listen to me. You need to be careful. Voss is dead, but whoever's behind that phone call is very much alive. I know. Do you? Teresa's voice sharpened. Because you keep walking into situations alone. Meeting Huxley in a park. Going to the hospital when you're still a target. You're making yourself vulnerable. Emily's jaw tightened. I'm not hiding. I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to be smart. Teresa sat down across from her. We're close, Emily. The Attorney General's investigation is moving forward. The board's scared. But if something happens to you, nothing's going to happen to me. Teresa stared at her for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. I'm calling someone. A private investigator I've worked with before. He's going to keep an eye on you. Teresa. Non-negotiable. Teresa was already dialing. You want to fight this war? Fine, but you're not doing it unprotected. Emily didn't argue. The investigator's name was Marcus Webb, former military, now working private security and investigation. He met Emily the next morning at a diner 3 blocks from her apartment. He was in his early 40s, compact build, watchful eyes that never stopped moving. Teresa says you've got a problem, Webb said, stirring his coffee. Emily slid a piece of paper across the table. She'd written down everything, the timeline, the threats, the players involved. Webb read it without expression. Then he looked up. You pissed off some serious people. I know. Good. Means you know what you're dealing with. He folded the paper and tucked it into his jacket. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll run background on the board members, see who has the most to lose. I'll also trace that phone call, see if we can identify the source. Can you do that? Webb's mouth twitched, almost a smile. I've done worse. Emily nodded. What do you need from me? Stay visible. Go to work. Run errands. Live your life. But follow some rules. No meeting strangers alone. No going to isolated locations. And if anything feels wrong, you call me immediately. He slid a business card across the table. That number goes straight to my cell, day or night. Emily took the card. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just stay alive long enough for me to do my job. He left cash on the table and walked out. Emily sat there for a moment, staring at the card. Then she pocketed it and headed to Blackridge General. The hospital felt different now, quieter. The usual chaos was still there, patients, staff, emergencies, but underneath it something had shifted. People made eye contact. Conversations didn't stop when she walked by. A few nurses even nodded at her in the hallways. Emily found Monica in her office, surrounded by file boxes. What's all this? Emily asked. Monica looked up, exhaustion written across her face. Board meeting minutes, 5 years worth. You wanted proof they knew what Voss was doing? Here it is. Emily stepped closer, scanning the documents spread across the desk. Meeting agendas, financial reports, internal memos, all stamped with the Blackridge General seal. Where did you get these? Emily asked. Monica's voice was quiet. Records department. They're supposed to be confidential, but She trailed off, then met Emily's eyes. I'm done protecting them. Emily started reading. The first document was a budget report from 3 years ago, flagging unusual consulting expenditures. The second was a memo from the CFO questioning payments to Meridian Solutions Group. The third was meeting minutes where a board member raised concerns about staff turnover rates, and in every case the concerns were noted and dismissed. Emily's hands tightened on the papers. They knew. Every single one of them knew. Monica nodded. And they did nothing. Emily pulled out her phone and took photos of every document, uploading them to a secure cloud folder Teresa had set up. This is enough, Emily said. This proves complicity. Monica leaned back in her chair. What happens now? Now we make sure everyone sees it. That afternoon, Emily met with the Riverside Tribune reporter who'd been covering the story. A woman named Jenna Park, sharp-eyed and relentless. They sat in a corner booth at a coffee shop, Emily's laptop open between them. These are board meeting minutes? Jenna asked, scrolling through the files. Yes. They showed the board was aware of financial irregularities, staff complaints, and safety violations, and they ignored all of it. Jenna's eyes lit up. This is huge. Can I verify these are authentic? Teresa Grimaldi can confirm. She's compiling everything for the Attorney General. Jenna was already typing notes. I need quotes, on the record. Emily hesitated, then she nodded. Use my name. You sure this is going to make you a bigger target? Emily's voice was steady. I'm already a target. Might as well make it count. The article went live the next morning. Blackridge Board knew about Voss's misconduct and did nothing. The response was immediate. Social media exploded. Local news picked it up. By noon, protesters had gathered outside Blackridge General, holding signs demanding accountability. Emily watched from her apartment window as the story spread across every platform. Her phone rang non-stop. Reporters, supporters, strangers wanting to share their own hospital horror stories. She ignored most of it, but one call came from a number she recognized. Kyle. Emily, turn on channel 7. She grabbed the remote and switched channels. A press conference was underway. The Attorney General himself stood at a podium, flanked by investigators and legal staff. After a thorough investigation into Blackridge General Hospital and its former CEO, Adrian Voss, we have uncovered evidence of systematic fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of authority. We are now expanding our investigation to include members of the hospital's board of directors who we believe were complicit in allowing these activities to continue. The room erupted with questions. The Attorney General continued, We will be issuing subpoenas for all board members and conducting a full audit of the hospital's finances. Anyone found to have knowingly participated in or concealed criminal activity will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Emily's heart pounded. Kyle's voice came through the phone. You did it! Emily couldn't speak. Emily? You there? She exhaled slowly. Yeah, I'm here. This is it, right? It's over? Emily watched the press conference, watched the Attorney General field questions, watched the carefully controlled expressions of the investigators behind him. Not yet, she said quietly. But we're close. That night, Emily's phone buzzed, a text from Webb. Found something. Need to meet. Tonight. Emily texted back. Where? Your place. 9 p.m. Webb arrived exactly on time, carrying a laptop and a file folder. Emily let him in and locked the door behind him. What did you find? She asked. Webb set the laptop on her kitchen table and opened it. The distorted phone call you received? I traced it. Came from a burner phone, bought with cash, but the cell tower data shows it was made from inside Riverside. Emily leaned closer. Can you narrow it down? Already did. Webb pulled up a map with a red circle marked on it. Call originated within 2 blocks of here. He tapped the screen, specifically from the parking garage adjacent to this building. Emily's blood ran cold. Someone was watching me. Looks that way. Webb opened the file folder. I also ran deep backgrounds on all 7 board members. Most are clean, just cowards who look the other way. But 2 stand out. He slid photos across the table. Gerald Huxley and another man Emily didn't recognize. Younger, sharp suit, cold eyes. "Who's that?" Emily asked. "Nathan Cross, board treasurer. He's been with Blackridge for 8 years, and his financials don't add up. He's living way above his disclosed salary, expensive car, second home in Tahoe, kid in private school. I dug into his accounts and found monthly deposits that matched the timeline of Meridian Solutions payments." Emily's jaw tightened. He was getting kickbacks. More than that, I think he was Voss's partner. They split the money, and Cross used his position on the board to cover their tracks. "Does the Attorney General know?" Webb shook his head. "Not yet, but they will. I'm sending everything over tomorrow." Emily stared at the photos. "What about Huxley?" "He's dirty too, just in a different way. Huxley's been billing personal expenses to the hospital for years. Travel, meals, consulting fees for his wife's interior design business. It's not embezzlement on Voss's scale, but it's enough to sink him." Emily's mind raced. "If we expose Cross now, he'll run," Webb finished. "That's why we wait. Let the AG move first. They'll freeze assets, issue warrants, make it so he can't disappear." Emily nodded slowly. "How long?" "Could be days, could be hours, depends on how fast they move." Webb closed the laptop. "In the meantime, you need to stay off the radar. Cross knows you're the one pushing this. If he feels cornered, I'll be careful." Webb's eyes were hard. "I'm serious, Emily. These aren't hospital administrators anymore. They're criminals facing prison time. That makes them dangerous." Emily met his gaze. "I understand." Webb left, and Emily locked the door behind him. She stood in her apartment, the silence pressing in, and allowed herself one moment of doubt. What if Webb was right? What if she'd pushed too far? Then she thought about Kyle, Monica, all the people who'd been too scared to speak up. She thought about the patients who'd suffered because of Voss's greed. She thought about the system that had protected him for years, and the doubt vanished. She wasn't stopping now. The next morning, Emily woke to her phone ringing. Teresa. "They're moving," Teresa said without preamble. "A G's office just executed search warrants at Cross's home and office. They've also issued warrants for Huxley and 2 other board members." Emily sat up. "When?" "Right now. It's happening as we speak." Emily turned on the TV. Breaking news banners scrolled across the screen. State raids Blackridge board members' properties. An ongoing fraud investigation. Helicopter footage showed police vehicles outside a large house in the suburbs, Cross's home. Officers carried boxes out to unmarked vans. Emily's pulse quickened. What happens next? They'll process evidence, build charges, make arrests? This could move fast. Teresa paused. "Emily, you need to prepare yourself. When Cross goes down, he might try to drag you with him. Claim you fabricated evidence, manipulated witnesses, anything to create reasonable doubt. Let him try." "I'm serious. You need to be ready for a fight." Emily's voice was steady. "I've been ready." By midday, the news was everywhere. Nathan Cross had been taken into custody. Gerald Huxley had been arrested at his office. 2 other board members had surrendered to authorities. The charges were extensive: fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. Blackridge General's board of directors had effectively collapsed. Emily stood in her apartment watching the coverage, feeling something she hadn't felt in weeks: vindication. Her phone buzzed, a text from Monica. "The staff is gathering in the cafeteria. You should come." Emily hesitated, then grabbed her jacket and headed out. The cafeteria was packed when she arrived. Nurses, doctors, techs, administrative staff, people crammed into every available space. The energy was electric, a mixture of shock and relief, and something close to celebration. Emily slipped in through the side door and stood near the back. Monica spotted her and pushed through the crowd. "You came! What's happening?" "Interim administration just announced a town hall. They're trying to calm everyone down, but..." Monica gestured at the room. "People want answers." A woman in a business suit stepped up to a microphone at the front of the room. Emily recognized her from news reports. Dr. Lillian Foster, brought in as interim CEO by the State Medical Board. "Thank you all for coming," Dr. Foster began, her voice calm but firm. I know today has been difficult and confusing. I want to assure you that this hospital will continue operating, patient care will not be interrupted, and your jobs are secure." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I also want to acknowledge the courage of those who came forward to report wrongdoing. Your actions have exposed serious problems, and we are committed to ensuring nothing like this ever happens again. A voice called out from the middle of the room. "What about the people who enabled Voss? The ones who knew and did nothing?" Dr. Foster's expression tightened. "Anyone found to have been complicit will be held accountable. That includes former board members, administrators, and any staff who participated in or concealed illegal activity." Another voice. "What about the whistleblowers? Are they going to be protected?" Dr. Foster nodded. "Absolutely. We are implementing new policies to protect anyone who reports violations. No retaliation, no intimidation, full transparency." The room erupted in applause. Emily felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. Monica nudged her. "You should say something." Emily shook her head. This isn't about me." "Yes, it is. You started this. I just did what needed to be done." Monica grabbed her arm. "Emily, people need to see you. They need to know that standing up actually works." Emily hesitated. Then she took a breath and stepped forward. The crowd parted as she made her way to the front. Conversation stopped. Eyes turned toward her. Dr. Foster looked at her with something close to respect. "Miss Harper, would you like to address the staff?" Emily hadn't prepared anything. She didn't have talking points or a speech. She just stood at the microphone and spoke from the chest. "I'm not here to take credit," she began, her voice steady. "What happened at Blackridge wasn't because of one person. It was because people got tired of being afraid. They got tired of watching abuse happen and pretending it was normal." She looked out at the crowd. Familiar faces, strangers, people she'd worked beside, people she'd never met. Adrian Voss is gone. The board members who protected him are being prosecuted. But that doesn't fix everything. We still have to rebuild trust. We still have to prove that this place can be different. A few heads nodded. "So here's what I'm asking. Don't let this moment pass. Don't go back to being silent. If you see something wrong, say something. If someone tries to intimidate you, report them. If the system fails, fix it." Her voice grew stronger. "Because the only way we make sure this never happens again is if we refuse to let it." The applause started slow, then built, then filled the room. Emily stepped back from the microphone, her heart pounding. Monica was crying. So were others. Dr. Foster shook Emily's hand. "Thank you." Emily nodded and slipped back into the crowd. As she left the cafeteria, her phone buzzed. A call from Webb. She stepped into a quiet hallway and answered. "Yeah?" "Cross is talking," Webb said. "He's trying to cut a deal with the AG. He's giving up everything. Names, dates, how the scheme worked, who knew what." Emily's grip on the phone tightened. "Is he giving up Voss's partners outside the hospital?" "Yeah. Apparently Voss had connections beyond Blackridge, other hospitals, other administrators. Cross is naming everyone to save his own skin." Emily's mind raced. "So this is bigger than just us." "A lot bigger. The AG's opening investigations into 3 other hospitals in the state." Emily leaned against the wall. "How long until we know the full scope?" "Weeks, maybe months, but the dominoes are falling." Emily exhaled slowly. "Good." "There's one more thing," Webb said. "Cross mentioned you specifically in his statement. Said you were relentless, that you wouldn't stop digging. He's scared of you, Emily." Emily almost laughed. "He should be." She hung up and stood in the empty hallway, letting the weight of everything settle. It was over. Not completely. There would be trials, hearings, appeals, but the fight had shifted. She wasn't the underdog anymore. She was the one they feared. That evening, Emily returned to her apartment and found an envelope slipped under her door. No markings. No return address. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a handwritten note. "You destroyed everything I built. You took my brother from me. You think this is over? You think you won? You have no idea what's coming." Emily's blood ran cold. The handwriting was shaky, furious. But the signature at the bottom was clear. Richard Landry Voss's brother-in-law, the man behind Meridian Solutions. Emily pulled out her phone and called Webb immediately. "Landry just threatened me," she said when he answered. Webb's voice sharpened. "How?" "Note under my door. Says I destroyed his life and that something's coming." "Are you home?" "Yes." "Lock your door. Don't leave. I'm on my way." Emily locked the deadbolt and stepped away from the door, her heart racing. She'd taken down Voss. She'd exposed the board. She'd thought the worst was behind her, but Richard Landry wasn't part of the investigation. He wasn't in custody. And if he was angry enough to threaten her directly... Her phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. She opened it. A photo. Taken from across the street. Her apartment window. Her standing in the living room, visible through the glass. And below the photo, a single line of text. "I'm closer than you think." Emily stepped back from the window, her phone still in her hand, the photo burning into her mind. She pulled the curtains shut and moved to the center of the room, away from any line of sight. Her training kicked in before panic could. Assess the threat, secure the perimeter, call for backup. She dialed Webb. He answered on the first ring. "He just sent me a photo," Emily said, her voice controlled. "Taken from across the street. He's watching me right now." "I'm 2 minutes out. Stay away from windows and keep your phone on." Emily heard tires screech through the line. Webb had already been driving. She moved to her front door, checked the locks, then grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer. Not much, but better than nothing. She positioned herself where she could see both the door and the window, back against the wall. 90 seconds later, headlights flooded the street outside. A car door slammed. Heavy footsteps up the stairs. A knock. "Emily, it's Webb." She checked the peephole, saw his face, and unlocked the door. Webb stepped inside, his eyes scanning the apartment immediately. "Show me the photo." Emily handed him her phone. Webb studied it, his jaw tight. Taken from the building across the street. Second or third floor, angle suggests a window or balcony. He looked at her. "Pack a bag. You're not staying here tonight." "I'm not running." "You're not running, you're regrouping." Webb's voice was firm. "Landry just showed you he knows where you live and he's willing to escalate. That means he's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, but they're also dangerous." Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Where am I going?" "Safe house. I've got a place 20 minutes from here. Secure. Off the books. You'll stay there until we flush him out." Emily grabbed a duffel bag and threw in clothes, toiletries, her laptop. Webb stood by the window, watching the street through a gap in the curtains. "Is he still out there?" Emily asked. "Can't tell, but we're not taking chances." Webb pulled out his phone and made a call. "Yeah, it's me. I need eyes on the building across from 447 Maple. Second or third floor, east-facing windows. Subject is hostile, possibly armed. Do not engage. Just locate and report." He hung up and turned to Emily. "My partner's on it. Let's move." They left through the back entrance, Webb leading the way with one hand inside his jacket. They got into his car, a nondescript sedan, and pulled out without headlights until they were 2 blocks away. Emily watched the rearview mirror. No one followed. Webb drove in silence, taking side streets and doubling back twice to make sure they were clean. Finally, he pulled into the driveway of a small house on the edge of town. Single story, bars on the windows, tall fence surrounding the property. "This is it," Webb said, unlocking the front door. Inside, the house was sparse but functional. A couch, a table, a kitchenette, reinforced doors, security cameras mounted in every corner. Webb set her bag down. "You'll be safe here. Cameras cover all approaches, and I'll be monitoring remotely. If anyone gets within 50 feet, I'll know." Emily looked around. "How long do I stay?" "Until we have Landry." Webb pulled out a handgun and set it on the table. "You know how to use this?" Emily picked it up, checked the magazine, cleared the chamber. "Yeah." Webb's expression shifted slightly. Surprise, maybe respect. "Military?" "Army. Combat medic. 2 tours." Webb nodded slowly. "Teresa didn't mention that." "I don't advertise it." "Well, keep that close. Safety's on, round in the chamber. You know the drill." Emily set the gun on the table beside her. What's your plan for Landry? Trace his phone, track his movements, see if he's stupid enough to make contact again. He's already made one mistake, sending that photo. The metadata will tell us where he was when he took it. And if he doesn't make another mistake, Webb's voice was cold, then we make him. He left an hour later, locking the door behind him. Emily sat on the couch, the gun within reach, and stared at the wall. Richard Landry, a man she'd never met, a man whose life she'd destroyed by proxy. She pulled out her laptop and started digging. Richard Landry was 48, a business consultant with no criminal record and a carefully curated online presence. LinkedIn showed a string of corporate clients. His social media was sparse. A few photos of him at industry conferences, nothing personal. But Emily knew how to look deeper. She found his business registration for Meridian Solutions, filed 2 years before Voss came to Blackridge. The address listed was a P.O. box in Delaware, but the registered phone number was local. She cross-referenced property records and found a condo in downtown Riverside registered under an LLC. The LLC's owner, Richard Landry. Emily mapped the address. It was 12 blocks from her apartment. She texted Webb the information. His response came immediately. Got it. Sending someone to surveil. Do not go there yourself. Emily set the phone down and closed her eyes. She'd spent weeks fighting Voss, dismantling his empire piece by piece. She'd thought it was over. She'd thought justice had won. But Voss had been a symptom, not the disease. And now the disease was coming for her. Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat on the couch, the gun beside her, listening to every creak of the house, every rustle of wind outside. Her mind kept circling back to the same question. How far would Landry go? He'd already lost millions. His brother-in-law was dead. His business was exposed. He had nothing left to lose, which made him exponentially more dangerous. At 3 a.m, her phone buzzed. A text from Webb. We have movement. Landry left the condo at 2:47 a.m., driving east, tracking now. Emily's pulse spiked. She typed back, Where's he headed? The response took 2 minutes. Unclear. He's circling. Might be counter-surveillance or looking for something. Emily stood and paced the small living room, her hand drifting to the gun on the table. Another text. Just turned onto Maple Street. Emily's blood went cold. Maple Street. Her street. She called Webb immediately. He's going to my apartment. I know, my guy's on him. Police are being notified now. What if he gets inside? He won't. Building security has been alerted. If he tries to enter, they'll lock it down and call it in. Emily's jaw set. I should be there. No. You should stay exactly where you are. Webb's voice was hard. This is what he wants, Emily. He's trying to draw you out. Don't give him the satisfaction. Emily forced herself to sit back down. Fine. But if this goes south, it won't. Trust me. The line stayed open. Emily could hear Webb's breathing, the faint sound of a radio in the background. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Webb spoke. He just pulled up outside your building. He's sitting in the car. Emily's grip on the phone tightened. What's he doing? Looking up at your window? Checking his phone? A pause. Now he's getting out. Emily heard voices through the line, Webb coordinating with someone. Security's intercepting him at the entrance, Webb said. Cops are 3 minutes out. Emily closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe steadily. He's arguing with security, Webb continued, trying to talk his way in. Security's not budging. Then, faintly, Emily heard sirens through the phone. Police are here, Webb said. Landry's running. Emily's eyes snapped open. Running where? Back toward his car. No, he's on foot, heading east down Maple. Webb's voice sharpened. My guy's in pursuit. So are the cops. Emily stood, pacing again, her heart pounding. They've got him cornered, Webb said. Alley behind the pharmacy. He's got nowhere to go. A long silence. Emily could hear shouting, orders being given. Then Webb spoke again, his voice calm. He's down. They tackled him. He's in custody. Emily exhaled slowly, her knees suddenly weak. She sat down hard on the couch. You still there? Webb asked. Yeah. It's over. Landry's in handcuffs. They're taking him in now. Emily's hands were shaking. Did he have a weapon? Knife in his jacket. No gun. Webb paused. Emily, you need to understand. If you'd been at your apartment tonight, this could have ended very differently. Emily nodded, even though he couldn't see her. I know. Get some sleep. I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go give statements. All right. Webb hung up. Emily sat in the silence of the safe house, the gun still on the table, adrenaline slowly draining from her system. Richard Landry was in custody. The last piece of Voss's network had just collapsed. It was over. Really over. Emily laid down on the couch and closed her eyes. This time, sleep came. The next morning, Webb drove her to the Riverside Police Department. Emily gave her statement to Detective Hendricks, the same detective who'd questioned her weeks ago about breaking into Voss's office. His demeanor was different now, respectful, almost apologetic. Miss Harper, I want to thank you for your cooperation, Hendricks said when they finished. And I owe you an apology. When you were first brought in, I didn't have the full picture. I judged too quickly. Emily met his eyes. You were doing your job. Maybe, but I could have done it better. Hendricks closed his notebook. For what it's worth, what you did took guts. A lot of people would have walked away. Emily stood. A lot of people did walk away. That's why it got so bad. Hendricks nodded slowly. Well, you didn't, and because you didn't, a lot of people are safer now. Emily left the station with Webb. They stood outside in the cold morning air, watching traffic pass. What happens to Landry now? Emily asked. Arraignments this afternoon. He's looking at stalking, criminal threats, attempted assault. Combined with the fraud charges from the AG, he's not seen daylight for a long time. Emily nodded. And the others? Cross? Huxley? Sentencing hearings are scheduled over the next 2 weeks. Cross is cooperating, so he might get a reduced sentence. Huxley's fighting it, which means he'll probably get the full weight. Webb looked at her. You should be there. For the sentencing. Why? Because they need to see you. They need to know that the person they tried to destroy is still standing. Emily considered that. Maybe. Webb's phone buzzed. He checked it and swore under his breath. What? Emily asked. Cross just gave up 2 more names. Administrators at other hospitals who were part of the scheme. Webb looked up. This thing's bigger than we thought. Emily felt something stir in her chest. Not fear, but determination. Then we keep digging. Webb studied her. You know you don't have to do this anymore, right? You've done enough. You could walk away, move on with your life. Emily looked out at the city, the buildings, the people, the endless machinery of daily life. Somewhere in those buildings, someone was being abused. Somewhere, someone was being silenced. I'm not done yet, Emily said quietly. Webb nodded. Didn't think so. That afternoon, Emily met with Teresa at the law office. Teresa had news. The state medical board officially approved your consulting role, Teresa said, sliding a contract across the table. You'll be working with hospitals across the state to develop whistleblower protection programs. 6-month initial contract, renewable if it goes well. Emily scanned the document. The salary was modest but fair. The scope was broad: training, policy development, oversight. There's one more thing, Teresa added. The AG's office wants you to testify at Cross's sentencing hearing. Victim impact statement. Emily looked up. I wasn't his victim. You were targeted, harassed, and criminally charged as part of a conspiracy to silence you. That makes you a victim. Teresa leaned forward. Emily, this is your chance to tell them what this cost you. Make them understand what they did. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. When? Next Thursday. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. Emily signed the consulting contract and left the office. She spent the next week preparing. She wrote her statement, revised it, threw it out, and started over. She wanted to get it right, not for herself, but for everyone who'd been too scared to speak. On Thursday morning, Emily walked into the courthouse wearing a simple black suit. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, former Blackridge employees, victims of the fraud scheme. Nathan Cross sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, his lawyer beside him. He looked smaller than Emily remembered. Diminished. The judge entered and everyone stood. The proceedings moved quickly. The prosecutor outlined the charges, the defense attorney made a plea for leniency, and then the judge called for victim impact statements. Emily was the third to speak. She walked to the podium, her statement in hand, and looked out at the courtroom. Then she set the paper aside. "I wasn't going to speak today," Emily began. "I figured enough people had already said what needed to be said, but then I realized if I stay silent now after everything, then what was the point?" She looked directly at Cross. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "You didn't just steal money," Emily continued. "You stole people's dignity, their sense of safety, their belief that if they did the right thing, someone would have their back." Her voice grew stronger. "I worked at Blackridge for less than 2 months before I saw what was happening. And in that time, I met nurses who'd been there for years, decades, who knew things were wrong but didn't think anyone would listen. You taught them that silence was survival." Cross stared at the table. "But here's what you didn't count on," Emily said. "You can only keep people scared for so long. Eventually someone gets tired. Someone decides that dignity matters more than a paycheck. Someone stands up. Sir." She paused. "I wasn't special. I wasn't brave. I was just tired of pretending. And once I stood up, other people did too, because that's how courage works. It spreads." Emily looked at the judge. "Whatever sentence you give Mr. Cross, it won't undo the damage. It won't give people back the years they spent in fear, but it will send a message that this kind of behavior has consequences, real ones." She stepped back from the podium and returned to her seat. The judge took notes, then looked at Cross. "Mr. Cross, do you have anything to say before I render my sentence?" Cross stood slowly. His voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. The judge's expression was unreadable. "Mr. Cross, you participated in a scheme that defrauded hospitals, harmed patients, and terrorized employees. Your cooperation with investigators is noted, but it does not absolve you of responsibility." The gavel came down. "I hereby sentence you to 10 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $3.2 million. Cross sat down heavily. His lawyer whispered something Emily couldn't hear. The courtroom began to empty. Emily stood and walked out into the hallway. Monica was waiting. "That was good. What you said in there." Emily shrugged. "Just the truth." "Still," Monica smiled. "I'm glad you said it." They walked out of the courthouse together into the bright afternoon sun. Over the next 2 weeks, the remaining sentences came down. Gerald Huxley got 8 years. Richard Landry, after a brief trial where he was found guilty on all counts, got 15. The Blackridge board was completely replaced. New oversight committees were formed. The hospital underwent a full financial audit and restructuring, and Emily started her new job. She spent her first month traveling to hospitals across the state, meeting with administrators, training staff, developing protocols. She heard stories everywhere she went, people who'd been mistreated, silenced, pushed out, but she also heard something else. Hope. People were starting to speak up. Complaints were being filed, investigations were happening, the culture was shifting. It was slow, it was messy, it wasn't perfect, but it was change. 3 months after Landry's sentencing, Emily returned to Blackridge General for a follow-up assessment. Dr. Foster met her in the lobby. "Welcome back, Yas," Foster said. "We've made some changes since you were last here. Want to see?" They walked through the hospital together. Foster pointed out new complaint boxes mounted on every floor, anonymous reporting systems, staff advocacy posters in break rooms. "We're also launching a mentorship program," Foster explained, pairing new staff with experienced advocates who can help them navigate difficult situations. Emily nodded approvingly. "Who's running it?" "Monica. She volunteered." Emily smiled. "Good choice." They stopped at the cafeteria. It was lunch hour and the room was packed with staff, nurses, doctors, techs, all talking and laughing. "It feels different, doesn't it?" Foster said quietly. Emily watched the room. "Yeah, it does." Foster turned to her. "That's because of you." Emily shook her head. It's because people decided things needed to change. I just gave them permission to say it out loud. Foster studied her. You know, when I took this job, I wasn't sure we could fix this place. Too much damage, too much history. But you proved it's possible. Emily looked at her. It's possible anywhere, as long as someone's willing to fight for it. That evening, Emily stood in her apartment packing for another site visit. Her phone rang, an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Miss Harper? A woman's voice, nervous. My name is Rachel Nguyen. I don't know if you remember, but I filed a complaint against Adrian Voss at Maplewood Regional before he went to Blackridge. Emily's heart skipped. I remember. I read your file. Rachel's voice cracked slightly. I just wanted to say thank you for finishing what I started, for not giving up when they tried to bury you. Emily sat down slowly. You were the one who stood up first. You made it possible. I didn't finish it, though. I let them scare me into silence. You did what you could with what you had, Emily said gently. That's all any of us can do. Rachel was quiet for a moment. I'm working at a different hospital now, and things are better. But I wanted you to know that what you did mattered. It mattered to me. Emily's throat tightened. Thank you for calling. Take care, Miss Harper. The line went dead. Emily sat in the silence of her apartment, the phone still in her hand. She thought about Rachel, about Kyle, about Monica, and all the others who'd been hurt by a system that valued power over people. She thought about the hospitals she was visiting, the staff she was training, the policies she was building. And she thought about the future. Not perfect, not fixed, but better. That was all she'd ever wanted. Not perfection, just better. 6 months later, Emily stood in front of a conference room full of hospital administrators and state officials. She was presenting her findings, a comprehensive report on whistleblower protections and oversight mechanisms. The room was silent as she spoke, her voice steady and confident. The data shows that hospitals with robust reporting systems and independent oversight have lower rates of fraud, better patient outcomes, and higher staff retention, Emily explained, clicking through slides. The cost of implementing these systems is minimal compared to the cost of lawsuits, settlements, and reputational damage from scandals. She paused, looking out at the audience. But beyond the numbers, there's a human element. When staff feel safe to report problems, patients are safer. When accountability exists, culture improves. When people know someone will listen, they speak up. A hand went up. One of the administrators. Ms. Harper, implementing these changes requires buy-in from boards and executives. How do we overcome resistance? Emily's voice was calm but firm. You make it clear that resistance has consequences. You tie oversight to funding. You make transparency a condition of operation. And if executives won't cooperate, you replace them. The room stirred. Some nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. Change doesn't happen because people want it, Emily continued. It happens because the alternative becomes unacceptable. After the presentation, several administrators approached her with questions. Others wanted to schedule consultations at their facilities. Emily took their cards, made notes, promised follow-ups. As the room emptied, Teresa appeared in the doorway. That was impressive, Teresa said. Emily gathered her materials. Just doing the job. You're doing more than that. You're changing the system. Teresa handed her an envelope. This came for you, from the governor's office. Emily opened it. Inside was a letter on official stationery. Dear Miss Harper, on behalf of the state of California, I would like to commend you for your extraordinary service in exposing corruption and improving patient safety across our healthcare system. Your work has set a new standard for accountability and advocacy. I would be honored if you would consider joining the State Healthcare Oversight Commission as a special advisor. Emily read the rest of the letter, then folded it and tucked it back into the envelope. Well? Teresa asked. Emily looked at her. I'll think about it. Teresa smiled. That means yes. That means I'll think about it. But Emily knew she'd say yes, because the work wasn't done. It would never be done. There would always be another hospital, another corrupt administrator, another person too scared to speak up. And as long as that was true, Emily would keep fighting. That night, Emily returned to Blackridge General one last time. Not for work, not for an assessment, just to see it. She walked through the lobby, past the front desk, into the hallways she'd walked months ago when everything was broken. The hospital was quiet, evening shift. Most patients settled for the night. Emily made her way to the fourth floor, the nurses' station where she'd first met Carla and Becca, the break room where Monica had looked at her with exhausted eyes and said people didn't last long when they fought back, the ICU where she'd saved lives while Voss tried to destroy hers. She stood in the empty hallway, surrounded by the hum of machines and the distant sound of voices, and felt something she hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not for what had happened, she wouldn't wish that on anyone, but for what it had taught her. That courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the decision to act despite it. That justice wasn't inevitable. It had to be fought for. That systems only changed when people refused to accept them as they were. Emily heard footsteps and turned. A young nurse rounded the corner, pushing a medication cart. She looked up and saw Emily. "Can I help you with something?" Emily shook her head. "No, I'm good." The nurse nodded and continued down the hall. Emily watched her go, then turned and walked toward the elevator. As she rode down to the lobby, she thought about that nurse. She didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but she hoped, quietly, deeply, that if that nurse ever saw something wrong, she'd know she could speak up, that she'd know someone would listen, that she'd know she wasn't alone. The elevator doors opened. Emily stepped out into the lobby. She walked past the security desk, past the front entrance, and out into the cool night air. The city spread out before her, lights glowing in the darkness, life continuing in all its messy complexity. Emily got into her car and sat for a moment, her hands on the steering wheel. She thought about where she'd been 6 months ago, arrested, threatened, fighting for her life. And she thought about where she was now, free, employed, making a difference. It wasn't a perfect ending. There was no triumphant music, no crowd cheering her name, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing she'd done what needed to be done. Emily started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. As she drove through the streets of Riverside, she passed other hospitals, other buildings, other places where people worked and struggled and hoped for better. And she knew somewhere in one of those buildings, someone was facing the same choice she'd faced. Stay silent or speak up. Look away or stand firm. Accept things as they are or fight to make them better. Emily didn't know who they were, didn't know if they'd find the courage. But she knew this. If they did speak up, if they did stand firm, they wouldn't be alone. Because she'd built something that would outlast her. A framework, a precedent, a proof that ordinary people could fight power and win. Not always, not easily, but sometimes. And sometimes was enough. Emily drove home through the quiet night, the city lights reflecting off her windshield, and felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Not the kind that came from everything being perfect, but the kind that came from knowing she'd done everything she could. She parked outside her apartment, climbed the stairs, and unlocked her door. Inside, everything was exactly as she'd left it. Simple, functional, hers. Emily set her bag down, made a cup of tea, and sat by the window. Tomorrow, she'd visit another hospital. She'd train more staff. She'd build more protections. But tonight, she was just Emily Harper, a nurse, a survivor, a person who'd refused to let fear win. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.